Hello guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Sophia and my channel is called Sophia Make Crochet. In this video I'm going to be teaching you guys how to create a granny square. This is inspired by a blanket scene in the show Euphoria. I've never watched the show myself, but I saw a clip of somebody with this crochet blanket on them and I just had to make it. It's so beautiful. And I ended up making this blanket for my grandmother. She really wanted it, so I ended up making it for her for Christmas. And in this video I won't be showing you how to assemble the blanket. It's just a tutorial to show you how to make the square itself. But yeah, let's get right into the video. So for my project I used a weight for acrylic yarn. I used Red Heart in the color black, white, orange, and yellow, but you can really use any colors you prefer. You're also going to need two different types of crochet hooks. I used a 5.5mm and a 6mm hook. You'll need some scissors as well as a tapestry needle. For round one, I started with the yellow yarn and the 5.5mm hook. To begin, you're going to be making a magic ring. I'm going to show it slowly here, and you can watch a few times if you'd like to get a hang of it. If not, I would look up a more detailed tutorial. Xavien. You're going to begin by doing a single crochet into the magic ring and then chaining 2. Then single crochet and chain 2. You're going to repeat this for the first round until you have 8 single crochets and 8 chain 2 spaces.
Scientific minds we have today.
After your chain 2, you're just going to pull tight the string in the back to make the center tight, and then you're going to take your hook and place it into the first stitch of the round and place a slip stitch. Then you're going to chain 1 and you can cut and fasten off your work. When I'm working with granny squares, I like to sew in all my ends as I go for every single round. This helps avoid sewing in all the ends at the end of your project, which can be a lot of work. And sometimes I found myself not finishing a project soon enough because I'll procrastinate sewing in the ends. But I just thread the needle, and then as shown here, I go back and forth like 2 to 3 times, sometimes more. You'll know because it'll start to feel some tension when you're trying to put the needle through the work. That way you'll know it's tight enough and the end's not gonna fall out. For round 2, I'm going to be using my orange yarn and the 5.5mm crochet hook again. You're going to take the yellow piece from round 1 and then take your orange yarn and make a slip knot. Place it on the hook. And then with your yellow piece, you're going to find any of the chain 2 spaces and place a slip stitch with your orange yarn.
He's one of the best scientific minds we have today.
Next, you're gonna make a chain of 3. This counts as the first double crochet of the round, and then you will place 3 more double crochet into the same chain 2 space. Then this is the unique part. You're going to take your hook out of the loop, place it in the top of the first double crochet or the chain 3, place the loop back on and pull through for a slip stitch, and then you're going to chain 2 and do the same thing in the next chain 2 space. You'll place 4 double crochet in the chain 2 space. Take your hook out, leaving a loop upwards. And then go in the top of the first double crochet of the 4 and take the loop and slip stitch it through and chain 2. Same thing in the next. Place 4 double crochet. All in the same space. Take your hook out of the loop, go into the first double crochet of the 4, pull the loop through, and chain 2. You're basically just going to repeat this pattern until the end of your round, and I'll meet you back when you chain 2, the last chain 2. Okay, so we just did the last chain 2, and you want to make sure that you have 8 petals in the round, and then you're going to go to the first petal of the round and find this stitch here and place a slip stitch. Then you can chain 1 and cut and fasten off your work. again, I'm fastening in my loose ends as I go, just to make it easier for myself at the end. At the end of round 2, this is what you should have: 8 petals on a flower. So start with round 3. I'm using the white yarn and I'm changing over to the 6mm hook. I'm going to make a slip knot and place my yarn on the hook. Then you're taking your flower and finding any of the chain spaces and just slip stitching my yarn onto the flower. Then I'm just chaining 3. That counts as a double crochet, and you'll place 2 more double crochet in the same space. This is a granny stitch. You'll chain 2 to make a corner, and in the same space place 3 double crochet to make another granny stitch. Then just chain 1, and here you have a granny stitch, chain 2, granny stitch. That creates a corner. And the next chain 2 space, you'll make another granny stitch. Then you'll just chain 1 and we'll make another corner. So in the next chain space, make a granny stitch by making 3 double crochet. Chain 2 and do another granny stitch in the same space. At this point of round 3, you should have a granny stitch, chain 2, granny stitch, chain 1, granny stitch, chain 1, granny stitch, chain 2, and a granny stitch. Then make a chain 1, go into the next space with a granny stitch, chain 1, make a corner, which again is by doing a granny stitch, chain 2, granny stitch, all in the same space. Chain 1, and just keep repeating this until you're at the end of the round. So after your last granny stitch, you'll make a chain 1, and then you will slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 from the start of your round. Do not cut your working yarn because you'll be using the same color for your next round. But basically this is what your project should look like after you finish round 3. For round 4, you're just going to continue crocheting with the white yarn that you had attached. I would start by chaining 4, which counts as a double crochet, and chain 1. In the next space, in the corner space, you're going to be doing another corner stitch, which would be granny stitch, chain 2, and granny stitch all in the same spot. Then you'll chain 1, go into the next space and do a granny stitch, chain 1, go into the next chain 1 space, do a granny stitch, chain 1, and then into the next corner or chain 2 space you're going to do granny stitch, chain 2, granny stitch. And this is basically the pattern you're just going to keep repeating. So in all the chain 2 spaces you're going to be placing another corner, and then in all the chain 1 spaces you just do a granny stitch and a chain 1.
Xavien.
When you reach this point where you have a granny stitch chain 1 and that chain 4 from the beginning, you're going to just place 2 double crochet in that last space because that chain is a double crochet. So you go up to the 3rd chain, not the 4th, because that's the chain 1, and you do a slip stitch. So that just completes round 4, and this is just what it should look like. You're not going to be cutting your yarn just yet. You're going to do one more round with the same pattern. Alright, for round 5, chain up 3 and then put 2 double crochet in that first space. This is your first granny stitch, chain 1, go into the chain 2 space and do granny stitch, chain 2, granny stitch. Then chain 1, go into the chain 1 space and place a granny stitch, chain 1, and do the same thing in the next 2 chain 1 spaces, granny stitch, chain 1. So like the last 2 rounds, you're just going to repeat this pattern. In all your chain 2 spaces, you're doing a corner, which consists of granny stitch, chain 2, granny stitch, all in that same space. And then in all the chain 1 spaces, you're going to do a granny stitch, chain 1. we've reached the last stitch, make sure to chain 1 and go into the top of your chain 3 with a slip stitch. Then chain 1, and you can cut and fasten off your work. This is what your work should look like, and then now is the time where you should be keeping up with sewing in your ends. You'll just do the same thing as usual, go through the back of your work a few times, back and forth. And you can cut it off and do the same thing with the other loose end.
Scientific minds we have today.
Okay, for round 6, we're switching to the black yarn, and we're going to keep using the 6mm hook. Start by making a slip knot and putting the yarn on your hook, and then you can take your square, and I started in the corner by placing a slip knot. Then chain up 3, place 2 double crochet in the same space. This counts as your first granny stitch. And you chain 2, and in the same space do another granny stitch, and then chain 1. Basically going to be repeating the same pattern that we used in the last 3 rounds. This consists of doing a granny stitch, chain 1 in all of your chain 1 spaces, and then in all of the chain 2 spaces you're going to place a granny stitch, chain 2 granny stitch to make a corner. So just repeat this all the way around your work, and we'll meet back when we reach the end.
Xavien.
Okay guys, we're placing our last granny stitch, and then don't forget to chain 1 after this last granny stitch and slip stitch in the top of the chain 3 from the beginning of the round. And then you can chain 1 and cut and tie off your work. The last thing you need to do before you're complete is just flip your work over and sew in your ends. There's a few things you can do after you've made all your squares if you're going to end up making the blanket as well. You can sew them together with a needle and some yarn, which for me personally, I don't prefer that because it takes a while and I don't love sewing. Or you could slip stitch them together, or you could crochet as you go, like crochet them together as you go. And that is what I did. It's not the cleanest look, but it is the easiest for me personally. So when I reached each of the chain 1 spaces, I would slip stitch to the other chain 1 space of the other square that I'm attaching. But there is plenty of tutorials out there for attaching your granny squares. So just have fun with it, guys. And I would love to see any of your results if you crochet this blanket as well. I would love to. You can tag me on Instagram, share it with me on Facebook. I'm Sophia May Crochet on all of the platforms.